Hannah Bassett, and today I'm going to tell you why plastic is actually the most important invention in the modern world. I'd like to start with just a bit on the history of plastic. While the invention of plastic was influenced by many other processes, the most important event was Alexander Park's discovery of Parkazine. Parks actually worked in the metal industry, and he was quite successful. While experimenting one day, he created a plastic by dissolving cellulose nitrate in alcohol and camphor that contained ether. The material was able to be molded when hot, but then held its shape when it was dry. Parks had high hopes for the future of his creation. Unfortunately, when Parks attempted to mass-produce the item, he attempted to make the process more affordable, and as a result, the quality suffered. He sold his company to his associate, Daniel Spills, who later ran into the same problem and his company failed as well. Then, in the 1860s, the next advancement was a result of a New York billiard company offering $10,000 to anyone who could come up with a synthetic material to make billiard balls out of. The balls were originally made from ivory, and it was getting very expensive and even more rare to come by. This caused John Hyatt to begin experimenting. He ended up with a similar material to Parks, out of cellulose nitrate and camphor. He deemed this celluloid. Although it had a higher rate of success than Parks' plastic saw, it was soon taken off the market due to the high flammability. Some cases even report billiard balls bursting into flame during intense play. In response to a growing need for whiteboards, two German researchers created Galilith, which was made from casein, the protein in milk. While this plastic is not used a lot today, it is still used to make buttons for clothing. By far, the most successful contributor to plastic was Leo Baekeland, who took the formula for plastic and deemed it Bakelite. It did not utilize any cellulose and became the first fully synthetic plastic. It was also heat resistant, which meant it could not lose its shape when it was warmed. The possibilities for this new material were endless, as it could literally be shaped into anything. It was soon coined the material of 1,000 uses. The purpose and use of plastic has come a long way from billiard balls. Soon, Bakelite was being used in switchboards, counters, gears, and even washing machines. The main theme with the popularity of plastic was that as new developments arose, it was used more and more to replace existing, more expensive natural material with easier to access synthetic ones. The concept was so popular, it began picking up momentum across the world. Nylon caused an outright commercial frenzy when DuPont started selling nylon stockings and advertising them as smooth as silk, strong as steel. They were less expensive, better quality, and more desirable than stockings that were made from any natural material. Different plastics such as rayon, cellophane, polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, and polyethylene are just a few widely used plastics that have been developed since then. The significant features of plastic are what helped spark plastic's popularity. It's inexpensive and easy to access. Think about earlier when we were talking about the billiard balls. They were made from ivory, which meant that they had to import elephant tusks from Africa and then shape them into billiard balls as compared to just making some plastic ones in the lab. It's strong, lightweight, and flexible. Before plastic, the only strong protective material was metal, which is going to be much heavier and take a lot more work because it's not as pliable like plastic. It's also electrically and chemically stable. In addition to that, it being heat resistant makes it a desirable product to use with electronics, such as hair dryers or cell phones. So what is plastic actually made from? Earlier, we talked about some of the different chemical compounds that were discovered on accident to make plastic synthetic material, whereas now plastic is really down to an extreme science. You start with some sort of monomer, and then you break that bond, and you link multiple monomers together in order to create a polymer. So plastic are made from carbon polymers, which just mean that they're made of hydrogen and carbon atoms. If you see the picture on the bottom right corner, it shows you a monomer that originally had a double bond, and then it was broken to form a chain with single bonds. So that's how plastic works, and the different plastics are just going to have a different number of carbon, hydrogens, etc. than another type of plastic. But the base of plastics is you have one monomer and you string them together to make polymers. Kind of like if you think about amino acids and protein. An amino acid would be a monomer, and you link them together to create this bigger polymer, which would be the plastic instead of a protein. So here's a visual of some of the things we've kind of already talked about, but I just want to go over the evolution of plastic and how it's changed over time. So we started over in 1862 when Alexander Parkes invented Parkesine, and then you had John Hyatt with his celluloid, and then you had the Bakelite, which again is the first fully synthetic plastic, so it's completely man-made. And one of the interesting things about it being used in jewelry is it was really new because people were so used to jewelries made from things like ivory or shell that it actually took a while for people to buy into the idea of synthetic man-made looking like gemstones in jewelry, and it didn't really gain popularity until Coco Chanel in the 1920s started putting Bakelite jewelry in her products, and that's when it really took off. And then in 1908 cellophane was invented, and of course DuPont, again, they found a way to waterproof cellophane, and that's when people started wrapping candy in it. They used it to waterproof windows. It really became popular. Later, PVC became really popular and used in place of rubber. Again, that was because PVC was less expensive, so that follows the same pattern of you have a natural product, you're going to replace it with a man-made product that's less expensive and easier to access. It wasn't until 1925 that people actually started using the word plastic to describe plastic. Before that, you guys have heard plastic or plasticity to describe things that can change. In 1933, polyethylene is used in milk cartons, soda bottles, and food containers, and we still use that in the same things. And in 1838, Plunkett actually discovered Teflon, which if you guys know Teflon cooking ware, that's that coating that makes things non-stick. Alright, so moving right along, we already talked about how DuPont marketed nylon as a replacement for traditional stockings. Then you had acrylonitrile butadiene styrene, and that started being used for pipes, golf clubs, toys, car parts, and even some of those really bright tattoo inks. It's actually just a form of plastic. Then, in 1951, DuPont brought another popular plastic to the commercial market, and this was actually polyester clothing. So any top you have that's some sort of polyester blend, that's a synthetic plastic material. In 1953, GE actually patented Lexan, which is a bulletproof material, and they use that for windows, space helmets, DVDs, CDs, cell phones, and laptops. They even used it in fighter jet windows because it's a really strong material. Then in 1954, the Dow Chemical Company patented styrofoam. And then in 1965, DuPont comes on the market again with Kevlar. You guys have probably heard of Kevlar. It's used for bulletproofing, by the military and the police. It's lightweight, but it's 5 times the strength of steel, which is crazy. And then finally, in 1979, Mills Company created the fleece material. So fleece, again, when you guys see those Columbia or North Face fleece jackets, that is a synthetic man-made material that's a form of plastic. Alright, so to drive home the idea that plastic is the most important invention of the modern times, I just want to show you guys a couple pictures. So here we have life with plastic in the kitchen. And then here's not such a great picture of life without plastic in the kitchen. Now let's just compare these two images for a second and see all the benefits we use with plastic every day. You can see that her stove is gone, her kettle, her trash can, all of those bottles and cartons that you hold food in, your sinks, and your refrigerator, her microwave, her dishes, her actual cookware. If you remember earlier, I talked about how Teflon is used to make all of those pans non-stick. So the coffee maker, all of these other things all use plastic, and part of that is because plastic is heat, chemical, and electrical resistant, which allows it to withstand all the things we need it for. So let's just talk about everyday life with plastic in the living room. And now let's take away that plastic. So I want you to go ahead and look at all these things that were removed once we took plastic away. But what I'm going to focus on is the electronics. You don't have the lamp, you don't have a TV, a stereo, fax machine, a cell phone. And not only is plastic used in the bodies of these products, but also in the wiring and the technology, like the display to light up the TV and the insulation or the circuit boards on the cell phone. So if you think about a class like this where it's all online, none of us would be able to even have this class without plastic. Moving on, let's go ahead and look at this picture of this happy family in the bathroom using their plastic products. And again, there goes the plastic. So when you lose the plastic, you're going to lose the bathtub, you're going to lose your scale and your fans and your toothbrush and all of these little, your hair dryer, all of these products that you don't really think about all use plastic. Now thankfully it didn't blank out in the second picture, but his pajamas are also probably polyester blend. So, as you can see, plastic is very important, not only in everyday lives, but for allowing technology to advance and providing that venue for things to happen. Just to drive that point home of why plastic is the most important invention, I've taken the list that we were given in class of what are considered fairly important inventions of modern times. So on this list, if you notice the things that are red, and they also have a slash out line through them, these things were all invented after plastic. And these things would not have been invented without plastic, because not only do these products use plastic in their actual physical bodies, but the technology needs plastic to work too. Like an x-ray, it's not just in the x-ray machine, it's even on the film that you print it on. You can't display it on the screen without the plastic that's being used to make that display. So this kind of drives home why plastic is the most important invention, because without it you would not even have these things that came later because they needed plastic.